Divorce has long inspired storytellers, from the tragedies of ancient playwrights like Euripides to the timeless works of Shakespeare and even today's best-selling dramas. But while modern divorces can be settled with the stroke of a pen, in the Middle Ages they often led to far more than just heartbreak. Imagine your marriage is on the rocks. The arguments never stop, you barely speak anymore, and when you do, it's filled with accusations and frustration. Today, you'd call a lawyer, but in medieval times, things were different. Instead of attorneys and courtrooms, you could be thrown into a pit with nothing but a club to face off against your spouse in a violent and public fight to the death. This is divorce by combat. One of the most brutal and bizarre ways that medieval couples could end their marriages. And yes, it was every bit as savage as it sounds. But how common were these legally sanctioned marital duels? How exactly were they carried out? And did they even happen at all? Let's dive into one of the strangest and most brutal ways medieval couples could settle their differences. This is Raw History. Influenced by St. Augustine's ideals of an unbreakable, lifelong bond, marriage became viewed as a sacred, indissoluble union, particularly by the Catholic Church. In the Middle Ages, it was the custom, especially in noble families, that such marriages were arranged, being more about survival, alliances, and social contracts than love. While strategically advantageous for both families, little consideration was given to the will and feelings of the all-too unhappy couple. This was especially common among the royalty of medieval Europe. One 10th century example is Lothair II of Lotharingia, who, in order to marry his mistress, attempted to annul his marriage to his wife Teutberga after only 2 years. Lothair made scandalous and likely false accusations against Teutberga in church court, claiming that she had committed witchcraft and incest with her own brother. Despite facing the threat of torture, Teutberga steadfastly denied the fabricated charges. When she was subjected to the ordeal of being scalded with boiling water, the church intervened, forcing Lothair to reconcile with his wife, who ultimately outlived him. Marriage among the peasantry, while often less restrictive than for the nobility, still faced challenges. While the peasantry had more freedom to choose their partners based on love, arranged marriages remained common, dictated by factors such as family connections or land ownership. Physical and emotional abuse was a serious issue, particularly for women who had limited legal rights and protections. Despite being an accepted practice in both Jewish and Roman law, by the late medieval period, the church's influence was so strong that divorce became nearly impossible to obtain. This meant that any attempt to break one's vows was considered a serious breach, both of moral and religious obligations. However, while divorce didn't exist in any modern sense, couples could seek an annulment from the church, a declaration that their marriage had never been valid. Although medieval church law imposed strict limitations on the grounds for these annulments, making it difficult for couples to obtain one. These grounds included if one party was already legally married to someone else, if the couple was too closely related, if one partner was unable to consummate the marriage, or if one partner was forced into the marriage against their will. Additionally, if one partner committed adultery, or if the marriage was performed in secret without proper church authorization, or if one partner deceived the other about a significant aspect of their life or character. The difficulty in proving these grounds, often due to the lack of evidence, deterred many couples from pursuing annulments through the church courts. For example, in the case of a plea of impotence from a wife against her husband, the only way to prove that he could complete his carnal obligations was to get an erection while being watched by several legal experts, priests, and doctors. Women also faced similar scrutiny, undergoing gynecological exams to prove their virginity. Couples were even subjected to detailed questioning about their sexual positions. The cost was another significant obstacle. For example, in 1531, a divorce between Elizabeth and Henry Savile cost a sum of £20, equivalent to roughly £14,000 in today's money. This expense often deterred those from more humble backgrounds who were more likely to settle disputes informally by separating. With divorce being such a complicated and challenging process, some struggling couples turned to more extreme measures to resolve their conflicts. In the Middle Ages, individuals accused of crimes could request a trial by combat, thus invoking the judgment of God to allow divine intervention to settle their disputes. One of the most famous examples, popularized in the film The Last Duel, depicts a 1386 trial by combat between Jean de Carouge and Jacques de Gris, who was accused of assaulting Carouge's wife. After months of preparation, thousands of spectators gathered to witness the fight to the death. If a woman made or received an accusation, she could choose a champion to fight on her behalf. In most cases, this champion would be her husband. However, this created a dilemma if the person she was accusing of adultery was also her usual champion. In such cases, she could select an alternative, or, in rare instances, choose to fight the duel herself. This practice was allegedly so common in medieval Germany that the swordmaster Hans Talhofer dedicated an entire chapter to it in his manuscript on fighting techniques, covering weapons such as daggers, spears, and swords. The resulting evidence from Talhofer allows us to understand one of the most bizarre and fascinating medieval practices in history: divorce by combat. According to German law, to ensure that it was a fair fight, the man was placed in a 3-foot wide pit, standing waist deep, and given 3 wooden clubs. The woman, assumed to be less skilled with weapons, was given 3 stones wrapped in a cloth, each weighing between 1 and 5 pounds. To further balance the contest, the man had one hand tied behind his back. While the man was restricted to the pit, the woman could move around freely. If the man, however, touched the edge of the pit with his hand or arm, he had to surrender one of his clubs. Similarly, if the woman struck him while he was giving up his club, she too would lose one of her stones. Talhofer's manuscript depicted both possible outcomes, one where the woman wins by putting the man in a headlock, and the other where the man prevails by pulling the woman into his pit. And while some of you still watching might be thinking, surely a husband and wife wouldn't really bludgeon each other to death with clubs and rocks, while the duel was certainly violent and gave participants a good opportunity to physically vent their frustrations, they rarely ended in either one killing the other. Instead, it was customary for the loser to be executed publicly in the town square. The man would be beheaded and the woman buried alive. And thus, divorce was achieved for the victor. Lovely. I think I'll stick to my lawyer, thank you. For more bizarre medieval practices, be sure to click the next video on screen now. And with that, I just want to say a big thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel. I upload new videos every week. Thank you, and see you in the next one.